Part A, it says predict, so we can just label the things that we know from our graph. Can you see that the amplitude is going to be 1/4? Can you see that your period is going to be 2 pi over your b value will be 2 pi over 3. We're going to have a translation or a phase shift of pi over 6 to the left. And finally, our center line or sinusoidal axis at y equals 2. That's describing things according to the characteristics of sine and cosine. You could also predict or describe things using transformations. What does the 1/4 do? Multiplies your y values by 1/4. That's a vertical compression by a factor of 1/4. What does the 3 do? That's a horizontal compression by a factor of 1/3. What does the pi over 6 do? That's a translation pi over 6 to the left. What does the plus 2 do? That's a translation of 2 units up. But when we go to sketch this, in part B, again, off to the side, I'll go through this step by step. So first I need to do my center line. My center line is at 2, so I go to 2. And label y equals 2. D, done. Next is A, amplitude. Our amplitude in this one is 1/4. So I go on my y-axis from my center line. I go up 1/4. That will get me to 2.25. I go down 1/4. That will get me to 1.75. This is a really skinny curve. Yes? A value, done. Our b value helps us figure out our period. Our period is 2 pi divided by our b value. In this question, our b value was 3, so our period is 2 pi over 3. We go along our x-axis and label 2 pi over 3 for one period and divide it into 4 equal sections. Half of 2 pi over 3, pi over 3. Half of pi over 3, pi over 6. 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6. The third dash will be 3 pi over 6. 3 pi over 6 reduces to pi over 2. Done the b part. Next we get to the dash. We're going to now graph our function temporarily with a dotted line without the phase shift. So what does that mean? Well, we're doing a cos graph. A cos graph starts at a maximum. So max, then center line, then minimum, then center line, then maximum. And finally, we have to do, oh, and what was I supposed to do with that one? Make it dotted. This will happen to you sometimes. You'll have to take out your eraser and then erase part of it so it's dotted. Tane, is that a question? Yeah. Yes. Yes. Whatever your period is, you have to cut that into 4 equal sections. And then finally, we now take each of our points and we have to shift things pi over 6 to the left. So I'm going to add on here negative pi over 6 here. This point that was at our maximum, it needs to get shifted over pi over 6 to the left. This point here gets shifted pi over 6 to the left. This point at the minimum, shifted pi over 6 to the left. Pi over 6 to the left, pi over 6 to the left. And there we have our final graph. Oh, we forgot to check. We did the dotted line, and now we have graphed it completely. Okay, practice these. 3, 8, 9, 10, and 11. I want you to look at number 11 right now. And why can't you graph 11 right away? What do you have to do first? You have to factor it first. Right? So just like normal transformations, when you have a horizontal stretch with a horizontal translation, it has to be in factored form.